Hey everybody, welcome back to Super Fun, Super Low Friction Friday. And yeah, today a bit of stuff to rip through on electric mini pumps today, so it'll probably be longer than I expect as usual, but I will aim to make this one the most interesting, most fun video on electric mini pumps to date. It's going to be a fun one in that after some fun electric pump news, we're going to be going to the end-of-life performance review and teardown of the Cycplus AS2 Ultra, which is a real powerhouse for its tiny little size and weight. But what's going to be really interesting in the teardown is we're going to compare that to the Silca Elettrico Micro. Recently, Silca did a video covering some independent testing of their Ultimate and Micro, and there's sort of questions around whether or not it is possible to have high performance for a pump this size whilst also having a pressure gauge. We're going to have a look at the differences between the Micro. How does the Ultra do what it does whilst being only 90 grams and having a pressure gauge and buttons, and what is potentially, we'll try to really nail down what the differences are and what Silca might be able to do around the Micro if they want to do any changes in the future. I think the teardown between those two at the end will be a bit of fun. So if you want to skip all the news and just get to the end-of-life review for the AS2 Ultra and then the teardown, go forth and do that. But otherwise, let's go have some fun. All right, so first up, we've got some of the budget options en route, because not everyone's going to be wanting to spend $150 to $200 on a electric mini pump. So seeing if we can find budget options that perform really well and last really well is also a decent part of what we're trying to get to. So far, the Cuspo's seem to be doing quite well, so keep those in mind. As Max, I've seen this brand a little bit around. I just thought we'd give it a go. No idea too much on that one. Quite interested in this one. I think has a fairly nuts claim. Like, why would a pump that weighs, from memory, I think this one says it weighs 110 grams. It says it somewhere in the description. Why would you try to go to 150 psi? I have a feeling, here we go, item weight, 110 grams. I have a feeling there is no way this is going to weigh 110 grams when it rocks up. And yeah, it would be pretty stupid to try to have a pump of that size go to 150, so piqued my interest. We shall see. Now this one's interesting, also by that same brand as the last one we looked at with Cycleasy. What does this one remind you of? Let's have a bit of a look. Sorry, one more before we get to that. A slightly more interesting brand. I've got a Nightcore EBP10 en route. I've had good luck with Nightcore in the torches side of things. My EDC 29 has been mega for good stretch now. So quite like the brand. Seem to do really good quality for the price, so this will be interesting. All right, back to this one, and let's see if this reminds you of another pump we featured recently. Alrighty, low friction peeps, tell me if this one looks rather similar to this one. Exactly the same case design, exactly the same display, exactly the same buttons. So normally, premium brands worry about cheap brands knocking them off. Based on how the Prestacycle felt and performed like an absolute cheap heap of junk from the start, I actually think we've got a reverse knockoff situation here where the Prestacycle Prestaflated Go is just a relabeled Cycleasy, whatever they are calling this model, for $59. So they've taken that, chucked another 130 bucks on it, and hey presto, hey bango, here is your premium inflator. I could be wrong. It's going to be very interesting when this one rocks up, but just based on how the Prestacycle was out of the box, I do not think I'm wrong. All right, everyone, this is very exciting. Get ready for the future. We have a 6-in-1. So we have a cycling computer that is also your mini bike pump, as well as it's a headlight, it has navigation, it's got AI, So wow, we are off to the races. Now, if you're wondering how much power a cycling head unit might have to inflate your tyre, apparently it's a lot, because on top of that, it is also a portable power bank. So this apparently has a 10,000 milliamp hour battery, which is what, about 30 times larger than is typical for an electric mini pump. At least the ones we've been looking at anyway. Oh no, here we go. Sorry, 21. It can recharge 4,000 milliamp hours, but I think it states somewhere else that it's got a 10,000 milliamp hour battery. Can function as a 10,000 milliamp hour power bank. So I'm not sure why that one there says 4,000. Anywho, details. 100 watt motor, which is pretty mega to throw into your bicycle head unit. Can go to 150 psi, and we can inflate the tyres 20 times with all that power that we have on tap. Now, I can't see anything that could possibly go wrong here. We can see, if we have a look at the, I guess, where the head unit looks in relation, like its size in relation to a bike computer on your handlebar. The screen size of 3.5 inches, that's basically the same size as a Garmin 1040 Solar. So going off these images, its over the top footprint or overhead view footprint is quite similar to a Garmin 1040, which is pretty small to pack all that in. But obviously it's going to be a lot thicker, but I've got a feeling that if this actually gets made, and I will try to get one, the actual dimensions are not going to look like this. So take note of this screen size versus total unit size to get all of what they're saying in here. Oh, and it's a Bluetooth speaker, of course, and a bike horn. It's going to be bigger, I think, height, width, as well as depth. I think this is going to be quite similar to, it's going to be a mini brick, which is going to provide quite some fun, I think. So aside from all the potential issues with integrating a bunch of stuff and how well any of those will perform versus a standalone unit of that particular item, there are always issues with such integrations where obviously if one aspect of it fails, you've now lost 6 things that you were maybe depending on. So for instance, if the light fails and you want to get that sent off for warranty, you've now lost your bike computer, your mini pump, your Bluetooth speaker, your power bank, the whole kit and caboodle. Or similarly, if your mini pump fails, you've now lost everything else to get that sorted out. But actually implementing this is going to be fascinating. They don't state a claimed weight, which would at this stage be a hoped for weight. It's going to be something, and yeah, that's going to require quite some computer mount, especially if you're doing some off-road stuff. And if it's a mount that is meant to clamp onto your carbon handlebars, I mean, if we're holding up what could potentially be a 0.5 kilogram unit to fit all of this in, then that's a lot to clamp to stop rotation on a circular profile handlebar, things like that. There's a whole lot that is going to be a really fun journey if this one actually comes out. So I will try to back it when it does. I actually think there's about a 0.1% chance that these will actually get delivered. This looks to me like it's more likely they're going to take any backing money and then just say, sorry, we couldn't deliver it. And whether or not that's the plan from the start would be obviously too early to try to intimate, but I haven't had luck on some other backings in the past that I would say seemed more certain than this. But you never know. Anyway, fun one. Sorry, just lastly, something jumped out at me on the images there. We can see the inside image. So that, because we don't really know the dimensions of this battery that they're displaying there, that's going to be either an 18650 or a 21700. 18650s genuine top cells will go up to basically 4000 milliamp hours. A 2170 genuine, you can get up to about 6000 milliamp hours. So you're not going to get a 10,000 milliamp hour battery by going one 18650 or one 21700. There are some batteries out there that claim 10,000 milliamp hours for both of those, and they are always full of crap. Whenever they are tested, they are woefully low. Most of the batteries that claim they're 10,000 milliamp hours when tested are about just over 1,000. So, yep, to get 10,000 milliamp hours into this, they would need to go to a pouch cell. If they're sticking either one of those options in, we're going to be looking at the at best 4,000 milliamp hour, and that's really going to be more if they go for a 21700, which is the larger. So something's going on with this 10,000 milliamp hour power bank. I don't know whether what they're doing there between the two conflicting thingies, but we'll see if they tidy that up and what the final claims are. But yeah, anyway, it won't be 10,000 based on that image. Alrighty, got myself a bit of a Excel block yesterday, so I smashed through some updates based on some feedback. First one, I have changed the total output, and rather than be sort of total air, like grams of air, I have changed that to total inflation rounds, because yes, that is better. I should have done that to start with. I am funny sometimes. So anyway, that has been done, and also then the efficiency rating is in that same format. So for the efficiency, what we're doing is we're taking the total inflations that a pump was physically able to do. We divide that by that pump's weight, and then I multiply that back out by 150, because then we get the total inflations as if all pumps weighed 150 grams. So we get a really strong relative performance of that pump's weight to what it can output. And yeah, we see that some of the smaller pumps that weigh around 100 grams, so even when we multiply that, divided by their weight, multiply it by 150, their total output efficiency is quite low compared to really where we want to see it, over at least 5. So if you've got a pump that weighs around 150 grams, you do want that to be able to inflate a road tyre at least 5 times to 70 psi. So anyway, hopefully that efficiency rating makes sense. The main thing I focused on yesterday was making much better performance degradation graphs. So I was showing before just the performance degradation percentage for each pump every 25 cycles. But if a pump had a really high output, even if it's got a bit higher performance degradation, but we're comparing it to another pump that's got a lower performance degradation, but overall not that great and output to begin with, you don't want to just look at one higher figure and think, well, that's worse. We really want both. So the graphs now show both, which is much better. So the performance degradation is the line with the point markers on it. That's the percentage of performance degradation versus when the pump was new. And then the columns are showing the total output in number of inflations to 70 psi for a 28C tyre. And that is their performance after the performance degradation. So we might see that, say, after 100 full test cycles, say the Magic Shine Arrow has had 16% performance degradation. That is more than, say, the Microsoft AirMac Pro at that time, which was 9%. However, its total output is still higher because it had more output to begin with. So anyway, again, hopefully that all makes sense, and that displays that much better. And obviously, if the line is at 100% performance degradation, that means it is died, and correspondingly, it puts out 0.0 number of cycles that it can inflate to 70 psi. That's been that. There are changes I'm going to be updating on the actual data table, but I'll cover those next update because I've already gone on a bit long. But there'll be some better display going on there hopefully soon. This file should be uploaded by the time this video comes out today to get the latest data file at where we're at. Alright, that'll do. Fun updates in the land of electric mini pumps. Let's get to the end of life review and teardown for the amazing little Cycplus Ultra. Alrighty, so as hinted at the start of the vid, this one should be a bit of fun with the end-of-life review and teardown of the AS2 Ultra. Really, especially in light of its comparison to Silca's Elettrico Micro. Mini history recap. So when the Elettrico Micro came out, that was a big step ahead versus any of the other electric mini pumps of around that size and weight at the time. So Cycplus's AS2, the Thumper Nano, FlexStyle Mini, all of those were really quite anemic in terms of their inflation speed and quite poor endurance, so total number of inflations. The Elettrico Micro was a big jump ahead versus its competitors at that time. Then the Cycplus came out with the AS2 Ultra, probably I think about maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And that really changed the conversation a bit because it's 20 grams lighter than the Elettrico Micro, but also includes a pressure gauge and pressure setting, and has very similar outright performance in terms of inflation speed and endurance. So that conversation around the sort of value proposition or best choice between the Micro and the AS2 Ultra became quite a thing. Where this conversation became more fun was, just this week, Silca put out a video updating the world on some awesome testing results from a big independent test of electric mini pumps. I forget who did the testing now. The nuts and bolts are that the Elettrico Ultimate, so their bigger one, I think pretty much cleaned house in that size category, and also the Elettrico Micro did overall very well. Josh did respond to some sort of questions and answers. One of the questions was, the Micro is great, but it would be even more great if it had a pressure gauge and pressure setting. And Josh's answer was that at this time, the technology doesn't exist to include a pressure gauge and setting for a pump of that size and weight, that really it is designed to replace a couple of CO2 canisters in your saddle pack. Just by the simple fact that the Cycplus Ultra is in existence and does have a pressure gauge and pressure setting and weighs only 90 grams and is a little bit smaller than the Elettrico Micro, obviously that answer is not correct. The technology does exist, and so I think that answer will have to be updated. And what we're going to have a look at once we've gone through the marketing claims, performance results, and get into the teardown is we'll have a look at exactly the difference between the AS2 Ultra and the Elettrico Micro, how have Cycplus done it, what may or may not Silca do in the future to, potentially match the same. So that'll be a bunch of fun. All right, let's go. So if you saw the video, a few months ago when I did the unboxing and initial performance testing of the Silca Micro, overall it was really good at that time. Any of the other pumps that were of that smaller, lighter weight, such as the AS2, the Thumper Nano, the FlexStyle Tiny, their overall performance was pretty bad. The Micro was a clear step above those. But then when the AS2 Ultra came out, that made that conversation around the Micro a little bit more awkward, just because of not only the performance you're getting from that size and weight and with a pressure gauge, but also it's obviously cheaper because the Micro is quite expensive. So that was sort of the mini journey we took on that a few months ago. And I do just think it is time that Silca need to have a look at, okay, obviously this product category continues to move forward apace. What do we need to look at for potentially a second generation of the Micro, because the Ultra has really shown what's possible in just 90 grams of pump weight. All right, let's have a look at marketing claims for the Ultra versus how it tested. Quick zoom through the main marketing claims. The claimed weight of 87 grams, mine weighed 89, so pretty close, but that is, again, it is astoundingly small and light for a pump to include a pressure gauge and pressure setting. Claims for these mini pumps around what they can do, because nobody's really using the same kind of standard, they're a bit all over the place and not always relatable to any media's testing. So we see here it says 700 or 25C tyre, we can do 2 to 110 psi. Further down, we can see it can do 28C tyres, 0 to 80, 2 times. Max pressure 120. So this one's going to be the most relatable. So they're using 28C to 80 psi. Twice my test is equivalent of a 28C tyre, and I'm taking it to 70 psi. So we'll be able to compare that shortly. I can't see a inflation speed for any of them stated. Not jumping out at me anywhere. All right. All right, inflating a 28C tyre to 70 psi first inflation, and these times are also extremely similar, inflating a 40mm gravel tyre to 35 psi and a 2.4-inch mountain bike tyre to 25 psi. The Ultra pretty close, but just ahead of the Elettrico Micro. Sorry, I've chopped the names off there a little bit. Miles ahead of the other small ones like the FlexStyle Mini, the AS2 from AliExpress, the AS2 definitely genuine, and the Thumper Nano. They are all quite a ways away from that time. Let's have a look at round 3. Inflating to 70 psi, 28C tyre a third time. Bit of a drop, so 74 seconds versus its initial 61, but that's not too much of a drop for the third round. The Micro dropped more, so that dropped from 65 seconds in round 1 to 88 seconds for the third round inflation. And again, the other very light pumps like the Nano, the AS2s and the Mini, they were unable to inflate a third round, so they were, all crash and burn by then. And so, whilst even by the end of the third round, it's a bit slower than some of the top performing pumps, but it's not massively so. We're talking say 10 seconds slower in the third round versus, say, the Muck-Off AirMac Pro, which is a very good pump. 12 seconds versus the AS2 Pro for a 90-gram pump. An extra 10-ish seconds by round 3. Pretty darn good. Sorry, I just noticed, weird tidal fields keep coming up on the graph as I move my mouse around. I didn't notice that till just now, so sorry about that. I'll try to stop that happening in future. Just ducking over to the total inflations graph here. So the AS2 Ultra managed to get basically 0.41 into inflating it to 70 psi in round 4, so 3.41 total inflations. The Micro did just beat that with 3.64, so whilst it was a little bit slower, it did have slightly more endurance. Right, quick zoom through the main highlights of its total performance. So its outright performance score across all assessed metrics is 54.89, which is very high. Like the smaller pumps are still going to give up some lower scores to the larger pumps, such as total endurance and inflation speed, things like that. If you want to have a look at how its points were made up, all of that is in just the main nerdy data table. So anything that is a blue column or blue numbered column is a scored category, and the ratings table for that is down the bottom. But for a 90-gram pump, that is an impressive overall score. Performance points divided by the pump weight. This is inflation speed that we're looking at here as opposed to outright endurance. So inflation speed, factoring in the pump's weight, it is a clear victory there. By volume, it's very small, but still factoring in others that really can throw out some air. Inflation speed didn't quite take the overall win when we look at volume, but weight, it was not a contest. A lot of these you'll be able to just have a look at it in your own time. So we break down the performance points it scored, and so how much it costs, so the value proposition, so dollars per performance point. The inflation speeds we just zoomed through before. Total inflations, how well it goes at handling temperature. For a very small pump, it was pretty good. So it was after round 3, it was 62 degrees Celsius, which is a bit hot to hold. But there are others that have been really cooking, so it's kind of in the middle. And total endurance, so total inflation is factoring in its weight, it was second to top. So whilst its inflation speed for its weight was a clear victory, outright endurance efficiency just coming in second to the Magic Shine Aero. Nice to say, for its size, it is outstanding, but there are still some limits to outright endurance and speed that a pump of that size can do. And also, it is quite expensive. Not as expensive as the Micro, but it's certainly not a cheap option. Right, how did it hold up over time? So after 25 test cycles, so there was an initial sort of fairly decent drop versus new. So it dropped basically 15% in performance degradation versus its first test, taking its total inflations from 3.41 down to 2.9. Then held on strong. So after 50 test cycles, that had actually, like within, the margin of error on this is probably going to be within about 5%. The pumps do seem to tend to vary a little bit from one day to another by a very small amount. So 13% drop after 50 test cycles. That's back up to 3 total inflations. But that's very similar to 25, but no real drop there from 25 to 50, so that's great. At 75 test cycles, 13% again. So it really hasn't dropped in performance after that initial drop. So it's held on pretty strong, still able to do 3 inflations to 70 psi. So that's pretty groovy, but it did die after the 78th test cycle, and it was the seal. It just, yeah, on that 78th test cycle, or 79th, it completed 78 okay. It was, working with basically no resistance, pumping no air. Final note just on the degradation. So whilst that was overall impressively lower than I had feared it might be for such a small pump working pretty much like a bat out of hell, that was good. It's great in terms of this being a product just for puncture repair, because you shouldn't hopefully get 75 punches in any upcoming decade, hopefully. But this is not a pump I would look to use to replace a floor pump where you're topping up your tyres before each ride. Just remember, it's a 90-gram pump, so using it to sort of take over even relatively light floor pump duties, I wouldn't recommend it for that use. But especially for roadies, as a really small light pump to pack for punch repair only, this thing is mega. So in terms of lifespan, 78 test cycles, slightly above the average so far of pumps tested, which will jump up a bit whenever I can finally kill the Via Recon, which is going to hit 200 soon. But then again, some of the cheaper ones coming might drag it back again. So overall, like 78 on the surface, obviously doesn't sound like a huge amount, but again, that's a lot of punches. It is equivalent to 116 16-gram CO2 canisters, so it would take most people a fair while to use that many CO2 canisters repairing punches. So this being really its specific focus, on bike or in New Jersey carry to repair a flat, it should last you an extremely long time unless something weird happens. Being the piston seal failure, so now out of 8 pumps taken to failure, we have 6 due to piston seal and 2 due to conrod bearing. Right, so overall quick wrap before we have a zoom through the end of life teardown. I've really got this one just, I guess, specifically for road use where you are just looking to inflate a tube. A 90-gram pump that has decent inflation speed, so yeah, small and light to carry, like mega. Don't look for it to replace your floor pump, and I personally still wouldn't look to use this for the potential extended battles you can get with tubeless repair, so especially off-road where you might be trying to seal up a hole with a plug and have a bit of an extended battle. You still would want something larger and with more endurance. I know some of the battles I've had with some fun off-road puncher repairs, the Ultra would not have got me to the end of those battles with a pumped-up tyre, whereas my AS2 Pro has. So sometimes that extra round of inflation or 2 can really matter. But yeah, just inflating a road bike tube, perfect. It's so hard to beat this one, I think, for that use case. if you've got the dollars, because it's not a cheap unit. Some negatives though, I know from using the Cycplus AS2 Pro myself for a bit now, like the gauge, all the Cycpluses have the gauge on the opposite side of the pump, and that is a real pain in the butt. You either need to bend in contortions to be able to see it, or you've got to put the valve into a position that's less handy for you to try to inflate, rather than just have the valve at the top and you're pressing the pump upwards into that valve. Also, the buttons are on that side, and you're holding the pump basically up against the valve. And so many times when I use my AS2 Pro, when I do that, I accidentally press a button. So I'm either turning it off and have to restart it again, or unbeknownst to me, I might be changing the pressure setting from what I wanted it to be. And when I go to check, it's stopped at somewhere different than what I wanted it to, be it higher or lower. So just having the gauge and the buttons on the opposite side of the pump, it's really not the best design in practical use. Other pumps that have the pressure buttons and gauge on top or on the side, in real world use, they simply work better. You have less errors or faffs and mucking around. The other thing, heat may be a factor, especially if you're using TPU tubes. It being only 90 grams, it will heat up faster than a lot of the larger pumps. So, whilst simply the air itself moving through the valve is a decent part of it, the pump getting hot doesn't help with that, because it's getting hotter air. So if you're using TPU tubes, just pack the extra, 10 grams to use the hose, as opposed to putting this one directly onto TPU tubes. Alrighty, here we go. Let's get this one apart and find the secrets as to how have Cycplus managed to get basically the same, or really extremely similar performance to the Elettrico Micro, but at 20 grams lighter, whilst including a pressure gauge and pressure setting. Let's see what secrets are revealed as we get to tear down more pumps as we test them to the end of their life. We do get to directly compare the pumps as we tear them down, which becomes a bit of fun. I don't think anyone else is doing that at this stage either. So, alrighty, journey of discovery, here we go. Okay, so here we have them both. We have the Silca Elettrico Micro on the left, the AS2 Ultra on the right. Now, internally, things are mostly identical. We have exactly the same motor. I am certain that it's exactly the same battery pack and the same cylinder. The differences are obviously going to be the AS2 Ultra has 2 extra buttons, a pressure gauge and a display, which the Elettrico Micro on the left only has the single button and none of the other stuff. There are minor differences that we can see here with the piston. So the AS2 Ultra on the right has 4 cutouts on the piston head, which I believe are to help air pressure push the seal against the cylinder wall and maintain a better seal, especially as the seal wears. And the Silca Elettrico Micro has 4 slots in the head of the piston, which is currently my favorite design, same as what we saw with the Muck-Off Air Mac Pro. I believe that is a superior way to go and help air pressure push the seal against the cylinder wall. Also, the Silca's piston is shiny. It must get at least 1 bonus point for that. Now, we can see that, so how does the AS2 Ultra do what it does for just 90 grams versus the Elettrico Micro at 110 grams? And the AS2 Ultra's got the pressure gauge and extra buttons. So internally, total weight is going to tip ever so slightly towards the Ultra being heavier versus the Elettrico Micro. I'm going to pop these 2 bits on the scale in just a sec, and I'll be back. All right, AS2 Ultra plus its bits and bobs, buttons, piston, nozzle. We have a total, can I get that on there, of 75.32 grams. Right, the Silca Elettrico Micro. Oh, I get back on there. So I'm just getting all the other bits from the teardown. Okay, we are at 75.80 grams. So from memory, what's that, 0.5 grams heavier, despite lacking the pressure gauge and extra buttons. But 0.5 grams, not a lot. That doesn't explain the 20 gram weight difference. Now, this may shock you, but if we have looked internally and can't find any difference, don't have a lot of other places left to look. So the Cycplus Ultra's housing, we'll call that 13.4 grams. That is including the end, because that's just part of it with the Ultra. The Silca has its own separate end plate that's screwed in on both ends of the housing, so for both units the other end plate was still affixed to hold everything together. Alright, the Elettrico Micro housing, the lovely extruded aluminium housing that it is, that weighs, ta-da, basically we'll call that 34 grams. 34 versus 13.4. We pretty much have our 20 gram weight difference. There we go, right in the housing. Now, this may shock you, but if we have looked internally, you can see there, flexible. The Elettrico Micro housing is 1.6 millimeters thick, and that is very strong and stiff. I can't flex that. And yeah, I don't have the strongest grip in the world, but I don't have the weakest either. That is solid as. Does housing thickness and level of sturdiness matter? I don't know. My personal AS2 Pro that I use, you can see it's a little bit dinged from a groovy year and a half of use out on the trails. I don't know how that dent got into it. I think I dropped it somewhere, somehow, in a rush trying to do a repair. But there's a decent gap from typically, say, the housing to, you'd have to try super duper hard to damage the internals, I think. So the Elettrico Micro's housing is for sure more premium and stronger at the cost of 20 grams of weight. Whether it's an advantage, disadvantage, would you rather have the lighter weight or would you rather have a stronger housing? That's going to be an individual question. It is a more premium look and feel housing, but this has a pressure gauge and pressure setting. Yeah, but we have found the weight difference. So let's just address the statement made by Silca on the technology not yet existing to have a pressure gauge in a pump of this size and weight. Alrighty, there we go. I think that gives us all our answers. The answer Silca gave about the technology not existing for a pump of the micro size and weight to have a pressure gauge and pressure setting, I do think they need to perhaps answer that question again. I mean, there's no other angle I can kind of approach this from, because one physically exists. It is basically exactly the same as the micro, but they've gone for a lighter housing and included a pressure gauge and pressure setting. So whether or not that option around that, whether that didn't exist at the time the micro went into production, I don't know. And once you're committed to a production, you are kind of committed for a bit. It's an investment, and you can't just decide after producing, say, 100 units that you're going to go, actually, we're going to now add a pressure gauge, so the housing has to change to have the display and the extra buttons and all that. So absolutely, Silca will have needed the micro to produce at least X number of units for that production run to be viable. Whether or not there will be a change on a newer version, I don't know. It could be that the economics are a bit tricky, because it really is a lovely premium housing. Potentially adding a pressure gauge and setting to that is going to push the price point up sufficiently that it sort of puts it past the tipping point. It's already pretty expensive for electric mini pump of that size, and the limitations that come with all mini pumps really that are going to aim to be around the sort of 100 gram mark. They're always going to give up some inflation speed and endurance versus the pumps that are larger than that. So for its target purpose, if adding a pressure gauge and setting is going to tip it up another $20 and then potentially have a big dent on the number that are sold, these are factors that I have no doubt Silca have to weigh up, regardless of what is the final reasons behind whether or not a pressure gauge comes out or not on the Micro in future. I just think that, obviously the answer given, it just simply is incorrect. We want to be incorrect for the least amount of time possible. Everybody always likes to get the correct answer to questions sent in. The Ultra's existed for some months now. I'm not the only one who will be aware that the technology exists to have a pressure gauge and setting for a pump of this size and weight. It's as simple as that. So let's get the correct answer out there, and then everybody's going to be happier with the answer given. All right, that'll do. Hope you found this one fun and interesting in the world of electric mini pumps. I'll have, I think soon, some updates on the lubricant test side of things. At the moment, I've just been ploughing through trying to get the testing done. The open test of the Hot Melt Plus SS drip is ticking along very well, but it takes a bit of time because the SS drip needs at least a 12-hour set time in dry conditions, and preferably 24-hour set time after each application for wet conditions. I've completed block 3, we're heading into block 4, so block 4 is going to take a bit of time to get through, but it's progressing, and the other 3 machines are all having a bunch of fun with testing for some private companies, which we do have some exciting things going on, which fingers crossed we'll be able to talk about soon with some of the products that are on test. Private results at the moment, but I don't think they'll stay private forever due to some exciting things happening. All right, as always, if you enjoy and wish to support the work that we're doing, like, subscribe, share, all that stuff, that'd be amazing. Look forward to chatting with you over the weekend where I can. It's going to be a super fun Formula 1 this weekend as well. So can't wait to get that happening. But look forward to your input and comments as always, and chat to you soon.